Welcome back from the break. I'm Uday Pratap Singh. You're joining us on NewsX. Our big focus this hour, the US has shifted its focus to the Indo-Pacific amidst the war in Ukraine, signaling that security in this region is of vital importance. Leaders of the Quad are meeting in person in Tokyo today, on the sidelines of which Prime Minister Modi will also be holding shortly a bilateral discussion with the United States President Joe Biden. Joining us at this point is a special panel. We have Ambassador Suresh Kumar Goyal, former diplomat, joining us live. Major General Shashi Asthana, former additional DG Infantry, Global Strategic Affairs Analyst, is live with us. Major General A.K. Sivaj, former Head of Territorial Army, is also joining us live. Nupur Tiwari, Foreign Affairs Analyst, is also joining the broadcast. In fact, she's joining us from Japan. Professor Asif Ramiz Dodi, South and Middle East Asia foreign policy expert, also joins us live. Nupur Tiwari, let me begin with you first, since you're on ground there in Japan. Give us a perspective there of how the meeting has panned out, how the press there is reporting on it, and the main takeaway according to you.
So, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, very good. So the event, actually, I just heard the event, what was you were there, Jai Sri Ram and Har Har Modi. Actually, I was there too yesterday. This was a community event, and definitely today they are having the Quad meeting that is totally different. Yesterday it was I'd like to talk about yesterday because I was there since morning to evening until the very late night, and I was covering as well. So it was an interesting, very eventful day. Mr. Modi arrived here. The Indian committee, they were waiting there. It was amazing. Mr. Modi actually broke all the protocol and went to Indian community and took photos with them. It was amazing seeing that. And after that, he had meeting with all the SoftBank, Suzuki, and Uniqlo, a few other companies he had meetings with, and those were really great. After that, the SoftBank president also gave the press conference. He had press conference after that, after the meeting. So, and after that, the community event, it was amazing. Almost 600 people were there from all over Japan. Most of us were Indians, and it was amazing, just like a festival. It's as you can see, I think your team is there, and I could hear that all the slogans and everything. So it is amazing, the way we receive Modi ji, and the Quad is also going to happen the same. And here is the difference. Definitely, the Australia's president, American president here, and their but the way we receive our prime minister, the way we shower our love, it's totally different. It's totally different. So I'm not going to compare. Definitely, it's we should not compare. But yesterday it was so overwhelming. It was so overwhelming because after 2019 he came. It is like third year. 3 years he didn't come. So we were waiting so eagerly to see him, and he just told everyone the lot of love. What is our similarities between Indian culture and Japanese culture. That what we have to do, what we are doing, definitely taking Japanese to India. And today, definitely, they're having a beautiful day. The Quad Summit. It's totally yesterday eventful day. Today is totally different, and I think they're like I saw, I'm not there, so I can just what news I was covering. I can see that they're together. They're going to have meeting about China, the humanitarian crisis, what we are facing, and a lot of other things are happening. But I think I think yet to a lot of other news, what is happening, what they're going to talk.
All right, I'll come back to you. Let me just quickly go live across to these visuals coming in from Tokyo, Japan. We are seeing visuals now of Prime Minister Narendra Modi and United States President Joe Biden. Their pull aside is happening now. That bilateral meeting is all set to commence. Let's try and dip in live to see if we can get some initial comments from the two leaders before they begin their meeting. Let's go full frame. Let's dip in live.
I'm pleased that we've reached agreement for the U.S. Development Finance Corporation to continue its important work in India, supporting vaccine production, clean energy initiatives, and I'm also glad we're renewing the Indo-U.S. Vaccine Action Program.
और मुझे भी ये भी प्रसन्नता है कि हमने एक समझौता अनुबंध अपना किया है अमेरिका के लिए, अपने विकास वित्तीय निगम के लिए, और उसको हम जारी रख रहे हैं और बहुत एक आवश्यक महत्वपूर्ण काम कर रहे हैं जो कि भारत को मदद कर रहा है वैक्सीन उत्पादन के लिए और स्वच्छ ऊर्जा के निवेश के लिए। और मुझे ये भी खुशी है कि हमने अपना भारत और अमेरिका का वैक्सीन एक्शन प्रोग्राम में भी नवीनीकरण कर दिया है, इसको रिन्यू किया है।
We also discussed the ongoing effects of Russia's brutal and unjustified invasion of Ukraine and the effect it has on the entire global world order. And the U.S. and India are going to continue consulting closely on how to mitigate these negative effects.
और हम इसके ऊपर भी चर्चा करेंगे जो कि रशिया के क्रूर और अनुचित युद्ध के विरुद्ध जो उन्होंने किया है, जिसका पूरे विश्व पर असर पड़ रहा है, और इसमें हम बहुत बारीकी से निरंतर परामर्श करते रहेंगे भारत में और अमेरिका के मध्य, और इसके ऊपर हम ये विचार करेंगे कि किस प्रकार इसके प्रभाव को हम कम कर सकते हैं।
I'm looking forward to continuing our conversation today. Mr. Prime Minister, there's so much that our countries can and will do together, and I'm committed to making U.S.-India partnership among the closest we have on earth.
माननीय प्रधानमंत्री, मैं बहुत उत्सुक हूँ अपने वार्तालाप के लिए, और हम दोनों देश और राष्ट्र इतना कुछ कर सकते हैं और करेंगे मिलकर, और मुझे पूरी मेरी प्रतिबद्धता है कि मैं अमेरिका और भारत के आपस के रिश्ते को, साझेदारी को बहुत नजदीकी बना दूं इस पूरे धरती पर।
मिस्टर प्रेसिडेंट, आपसे मिलकर हमेशा बहुत खुशी होती है। आज हमने एक और सकारात्मक और उपयोगी क्वाड समिट में भी साथ साथ भाग लिया।
Mr. President, it's always a pleasure to meet you, and today we also participated together in a very positive and useful Quad Summit.
भारत और अमेरिका की स्ट्रेटेजिक पार्टनरशिप सही मायने में एक पार्टनरशिप ऑफ ट्रस्ट है।
The India-America strategic partnership is in the true sense a partnership of trust.
हमारे साझा मूल्यों और सुरक्षा सहित कई क्षेत्रों में हमारे समान हितों ने इस ट्रस्ट के बॉन्ड को मजबूत किया है।
Our common interests in defense and other defense and other matters, and our shared values have indeed strengthened this bond of trust between our two countries.
हमारे पीपल टू पीपल रिलेशंस और घनिष्ठ आर्थिक संबंधों में भी हमारी पार्टनरशिप को यूनिक बनाते हैं।
Our people-to-people relations and our strong economic cooperation makes our partnership even more unique.
हमारे बीच ट्रेड और निवेश में भी निरंतर विस्तार होता जा रहा है, यद्यपि ये हमारे पोटेंशियल से अभी बहुत कम है।
Our trade and investment relations are also steadily on the rise, but they are still well below potential.
मुझे विश्वास है कि हमारे बीच इंडिया यूएसए इन्वेस्टमेंट इंसेंटिव एग्रीमेंट से निवेश की दिशा में कॉन्क्रीट प्रगति देखने को मिलेगी।
I am absolutely confident that with the conclusion of the India-USA Investment Incentive Agreement, we will see concrete progress in investment between our two countries.
हम टेक्नोलॉजी के क्षेत्र में अपना द्विपक्षीय सहयोग बढ़ा रहे हैं और वैश्विक मुद्दों पर भी आपसी समन्वय सुदृढ़ कर रहे हैं।
We're also increasing bilateral cooperation in the domain of technology, and even on global issues, we cooperate closely.
हम दोनों ही देश के इंडो पैसिफिक क्षेत्र के बारे में भी समान नजरिया रखते हैं और न सिर्फ द्विपक्षीय स्तर पर बल्कि अन्य लाइक माइंडेड देशों के साथ अपने साझा मूल्यों और साझा हितों को सुरक्षित रखने के लिए काम कर रहे हैं।
We both share similar views on the Indo-Pacific, and at the bilateral level as well as with like-minded countries, we continue to work to protect our common concerns.
क्वाड और कल घोषित आईपीएफ इसके सक्रिय उदाहरण हैं। आज हमारी चर्चा से इस पॉजिटिव मोमेंटम को और गति मिलेगी।
The Quad and the IPEF are two important examples of this cooperation, and I believe that our discussions today will give even further speed to this positive momentum.
मुझे विश्वास है कि भारत और अमेरिका की मित्रता, वैश्विक शांति और स्थिरता, प्लेनेट की सस्टेनेबिलिटी और मानव जाति के कल्याण के लिए एक फोर्स फॉर गुड बनी रहेगी।
I am absolutely sure that the India-US friendship will continue to be a force for good, for global peace and stability, for sustainability of the planet, and for human development.
So much. Thank you.
Mr. President, will you push Prime Minister Modi to take a tougher stance on Russia?
Mr. President, did you ask Prime Minister Modi to free himself of Russian oil?
Are you going to help him get some weapons so they can get some Russia?
All right, so those, of course, were the opening comments by the United States President and the Indian Prime Minister before their bilateral meeting commences. The two, of course, putting out their perspective on, of course, where India-US relations stand currently, the issues of convergence, and where further deep ties and closeness is needed. Also emphasizing on how the Quad meeting has concluded very successfully and productively today. Let me quickly bring in Ambassador Suresh Kumar Goyal, former diplomat, at this point on the broadcast. Ambassador Goyal, your first comment on the bilateral between the US and India, which has begun on the sidelines of the Quad summit. The opening comments that we just heard from the two, listing out, of course, the current state of the relationship that India and the US share. And also then, I'd like your take, Ambassador Goyal, since you've just joined us, on how the morning has gone, how the Quad meeting has transpired. So yes, a lot of questions for you, but please go ahead. You can take your time. And you're on mute as well. You'd have to unmute.
Right. Uday, thank you very much. Good morning to everyone. I think the views conveyed by both President Joe Biden and Prime Minister Modi at the opening of the commencement of the bilateral meeting, those were the traditional views which the two leaders would convey to each other, representing the kind of bonhomie and the goodwill that exists between the two, and statements of traditional goodwill, happiness, friendly relations. I think essentially the hard talk, so to say, would happen now when they will actually work out on the real issues facing the two countries, including Ukraine, China in the Indo-Pacific, China in the continent, the threat, etc., to India, cooperation in the area of technologies, etc. There is a whole lot of issues come up. But coming to the opening of the Quad meeting, I think there were one or two very interesting things that I noticed. First of all, the way India sees Indo-Pacific and Quad, and the way the USA sees Quad. If you noticed, Prime Minister Modi referred to free, open, and inclusive Indo-Pacific. Inclusive is a word which we used to hear for Asia-Pacific, Indo-Pacific long time ago. But I think in the context of Quad, use of the word inclusive was very innovative. If you recall, the inclusive word was used initially to reflect acceptance of Indo-Pacific to ASEAN countries. And then there was a kind of an apprehension that China's pressure on the ASEAN countries may actually dilute the word inclusive, but we are using the word inclusive. In contrast, President Joe Biden used the words free and open, of course, common between the two. And then he went to say connected and constructive relationship. So clearly, the way he looks at Quad in the context of Indo-Pacific is a bit different from how we see it. Also, the areas mentioned for cooperation, we focus on security areas, but our approach was health, cyber, uh, connectivity, uh, food security, etc., etc. Essentially, economic and social security related issues, while President Joe Biden talked about Ukraine and said that Ukraine is not only a European issue, but it's a global issue. So there are differences between the two, but the bilateral meeting, the way it began clearly underlined that India is a very important relationship for the USA, and the differences are not going to impact on the relations between the two countries, simply because I think, as I said in another discussion, there is no Indo-Pacific without India. India is integral to Indo-Pacific security, and the security is not just defense. Security is overall issue in the Indo-Pacific. For the defense, of course, which is part of the overall security, and clearly there is defense cooperation between India and other countries, and there is Quad defense security in terms of military exercises. But going beyond that, you have also AUKUS. So I think we have to look at now that Quad is becoming a more effective platform to talk about cooperation, sub-regional cooperation, and where China is a dragon in the shop. China has to be dealt with. China is becoming more assertive and more aggressive. So in that context, a Quad will have to see how to develop the security kind of a network. But this security clearly for India is not just defense, but the security is a much larger issue, including health, food, information, economic security, so on and so forth. So let us see how it goes on from there. Second thing, lastly, in the bilateral talks, Ukraine will be a major issue for USA. China will be an issue for India and the USA. We'll see how to deal with those things. But beyond that, food security will come up as a larger issue. Cyber will come up as a major issue. Transfer of technology and investments. Now that Ukraine actually will require huge amount of money to reconstruct, rebuild once the Russian operations are over, and they will be over sometime. They can't continue forever. So I think I've already taken too much of your time, and this will be actually in my mind, kind of a framework within which the bilateral talks are going to take. Thank you, Uday.
Yes, Major General Shashi Asthana, come in here on on the significance of this India-US meeting as well, happening on the sidelines of the Quad. At a particular juncture when the US also is taking a very aggressive stance vis-a-vis China. We've all seen the statement that was made by Joe Biden vis-a-vis the issue of Taiwan and how the US will defend Taiwan. Very, very significant comment made by him, don't you feel? That comment significance and this meeting significance. Major General Asthana, over to you.
Certainly, the meeting is very significant because there is a common thread which binds US and India, and that is the threat from China. Considering that, first let me answer your question. As far as Taiwan is concerned, although that comment was made and subsequently retracted by the staff when they were making the statements in United States, that the president has not said that we will not follow one China policy or one China principle. That's one part of it. But even if, let's say, hypothetically, even if it is a slip of tongue, it's a very well manufactured slip of tongue to give a strategic messaging, because Taiwan is very, very important to the United States, and it is also very, very important in terms of the strategic domain, considering the one island change. And even if, let's say, hypothetically, if China has to really use force against the United States, the area from which they will use that force, it indirectly will involve South Korea as well as Japan. So therefore, it is a red line for both sides, for China as well as USA, and therefore this contestation will continue. That's one part of it. Coming on to this meeting, certainly we have a lot in common. The new display of power is in different domains. The most important domain and the most important threat today is economic threat. So economic threat, supply chain threat, technological threat, cyber threat, these are new dimensions of threat. And now what Quad is looking at is economic threat. Now, when we talk of economic threat, you remember USA walked out of TPP, we did not sign RCEP, and therefore we need an economic architecture wherein we make significant impact in Indo-Pacific economy, which is going to be the fulcrum of the global economy. So therefore, this IPEF is a welcome step. And I think this being taking 40% of global GDP, I think is a major step. How it will work out, I'm sure they will. The concerned parties are going to work it out for the better. The second issue is the technological cooperation between us. A lot of foundational agreement have already been signed. So now it's a question of building up on that. As far as Ukraine is concerned, although President Biden mentioned it, because he has to mention it, the whole world expects him to mention it, especially the Western world. As far as India is concerned, I think our stance will remain what it is. We want the war to end. It is a global problem and it is causing inflation globally. It is an unnecessary war, could have been resolved if certain security guarantees were assured both sides. So therefore, somebody has provoked, somebody has launched a preemptive offensive. We have done nothing out of that. So therefore, we have no reason to pick sides. And I think that stance is very clear and that will be taken. And that would perhaps remain the India's stance. Now coming on to certain other issues regarding investment, which Prime Minister Modi brought out. Let me tell you, the USA had promised about $5.8 billion investment. Almost about 2.9 is spending. $4 billion more is being promised. So we hope that this side will pick up well. This was a point which Prime Minister Modi also in the opening remark hinted at. Similarly, when we talk of the cyber security and maritime domain awareness, now that is becoming very important. And last point I must mention is that although Quad is a non-security alliance, it's a non-military alliance, not non-security, non-military alliance. But we are conducting exercises. If the platforms, naval platforms are in place, if the interoperability is in place, the intentions can change overnight should China up the ante and should it become unbearable for all the democracies and the Quad countries. So therefore, this message is the only message which rattles China, because China knows the potential. And therefore, even if nobody names China, even if it remains a non-military alliance, China will continue to remain rattled with it.
Major General Sivaj, come in here on what you believe will come out of this meeting. It's happening very soon after that one-on-one meet that the two had, although that was virtual. And now Joe Biden and Narendra Modi face-to-face in one room together, meeting physically. It always makes a big difference. Which way is the India-US relationship headed henceforth? And your take on how the Quad meeting has transpired, the kind of statements we've heard, and which way this grouping is now headed?
Of course, Uday. First, as far as the Quad meeting is concerned, I suppose it has gone on dictated lines. Whatever was thought, it has basically gone into that line only. 2-3 things stands very clearly. One is, the principle of Indo-Pacific open and free has been spelled out categorically. Second thing is those guiding principles: freedom of navigation, rule-based international order, and maintaining territorial integrity and sovereignty of all nations, including minor island nations. That has been spelled out again and again. Now, this sent a very clear message to China And that is where the security apparatus of the Quad come into a form. I agree that the economic forum will play a major role, whether it is a climate action or whether it is basically vaccine diplomacy or your resilience in your supply chain, infrastructure development. But the security will also play a major role, and this is done by, the Malabar exercise has been conducted by all these four countries. And AUKUS has armed now Australia with nuclear power submarine, which was a weakling. So overall, I suppose a very strong message has been sent to China as far as the Quad is concerned, is that extremism and aggressive and assertive attitude will not be accepted, and China has to follow the international law. I suppose that is very clear. The second issue, which is very important, which has happened as far as Quad is concerned, a direct question when asked to Joe Biden is that in case that Taiwan is attacked by China, will US going to militarily help? And which he said yes. Of course, thereafter the staff has clarified it. But it stands out very categorically that they are not going to leave it the way Ukraine has been left. Because Ukraine also, they kept on promising they will support it. Other than sending them a military weapon, there are no boots on ground, no flying zone has made. If that thing happened...
Major General Sivach, I'm just going to ask you to hold that thought. We're getting a live briefing by the Japanese Prime Minister. I want to cut across live.
It's extremely valuable. The four of us committed that unilateral change of status quo by force will never be allowed in any region, especially in the Indo-Pacific, and that the free and open Indo-Pacific is ever more relevant today. And it was quite relevant that we are able to send the message to the whole of the world that we will be investing more of our energy in realizing the concept. Cooperative activities of our four nations have extended into broad-based area, and collaboration at various levels are deepening day by day. During the meeting, Prime Minister Albanese offered to host next year's summit in Australia. Four countries' partnership in realizing the free and open Indo-Pacific shall be further strengthened going forward.
This will be the opportunity for questions. We will start with the Japanese press. Please raise your hand. Please wait until I invite you. If you are invited, please come forward to the microphone. Tell us your name and affiliation before the question. Please continue to wear your mask when you ask the question to prevent infection. Yes, Yamamoto-san, please. Yamamoto, TV Asahi. One of the major topics of this Quad summit, I understand, was the response to China. In particular, regarding security matters, Japan, Australia, India, and the US each has rising sense of wariness against China. How exactly did you confirm among the members how to collaborate? On the other hand, regarding the situation in Ukraine, China and India seem to be siding with Russia, and their feeling and intention are presumed to be the same. During this meeting, were there any impact of this aspect on the Quad collaboration vis-à-vis China, or were there different levels of response among the four in terms of response to Russia? Thank you. First of all, what I must emphasize is that the Quad framework, the Quad is a forum to discuss extensive matters in order to advance practical cooperation in diverse areas towards the realization of a free and open Indo-Pacific, and is not covering any particular country. I must re-emphasize this point again. So we engage in discussions in this kind of venue, and during this meeting, as part of regional affairs, the unilateral attempt to change the status quo in the East and South China Seas was discussed. We discussed about serious concerns. So we did exchange frank opinions on such regional issues of concerns. I shall refrain from introducing the specific comments of what the other leaders mentioned, but we reaffirmed the importance of the principles such as the rule of law and the sovereignty and territorial integrity, including the situation in Ukraine. And in addition to that, we agreed that unilateral attempts to change the status quo by force cannot be tolerated wherever in the world. I believe it is truly significant that the leaders of the four countries managed to send out the kind of message that I just outlined out to the world in solidarity. Thank you. Next, from the foreign press, please raise your hand. Yes, Mr. Lande.
Wall Street Journal のランダースです。
This is Landers from Wall Street Journal. You mentioned about Russia. If I may ask a follow-up question. India, so far, has maintained its neutral position. And Japan, US, and Australia have been strongly...
All right, the Japan Prime Minister there addressing the media on the Quad meeting, how it's transpired. Major General Sivach, you can of course react to his brief statement and please do complete your point that you were trying to make earlier.
Absolutely, Uday. See, what I was trying to convey as far as China is concerned against Taiwan, you know, America has said that they are military can help them. The point today is, in case Taiwan cannot be helped militarily and America follow this one China policy, then Taiwan does not have a strategic depth like Ukraine. Then it is very difficult to defend it unless it has got a strategic weapon like F-22, F-35 or Patriot missile. So I suppose that America has to take into consideration, and their two ships, aircraft carrier group are there, USS Nimitz and USS Ronald Reagan in Taiwan Strait. It is a threat in being, but certainly this has to be taken into consideration. Now, as far as you know, the Ukraine war was concerned with Russia, that our stand which has been taken by India is been a very, very strategic autonomous stand, which is absolutely correct, which we are trying to convey. We are neither with Ukraine nor with Russia. We are with the peace. We want the war to finish and the dialogue and diplomacy should prevail, and there should be some solution which comes out. I suppose that America has realized and recognized our stand, knowing fully well that we take almost 60% of our weapons from Russia. It is not easy for India now to immediately stop that, because our maintenance and spare parts have to also come of the mixed series and also tanks from Russia. And our relations with China are not the best of it, especially in Eastern Ladakh. I suppose America will understand all this when there will be a talk between India and US one-to-one. As far as India and US relationship are concerned, from 2000 onward, the relations are on the upswing. Basically, 4 foundation agreements have signed. Comcasa, Limion, Beka was the last one, Basic Exchange Cooperation Agreement. Now, these agreements are game changer. What is happening is, earlier, the America was not giving to India the state-of-art weapons which was given to NATO, or transfer of technology, which is giving now. Second thing is important is it is ready to basically share classified data as well as real-time intelligence. If you take your mind in Ukraine-Russia war, the Ukraine has inflicted heavy casualty on Russia, basically by the intelligence which has been provided by US. So that is very important for us if we have to fight a war with China. So possibly the way the economic relations and the way the strategic relations are building up between India and US are something where we can cheer about. And we have already got a very state-of-art weapons like C-130J, Hercules, C-17 Globemaster, Apache attack, M777 ultralight howitzer, with majority of these weapons are transfer of technology like M777 being manufactured now by the L&T in India itself. So therefore, the point which is coming is the India-US relationship are on the upswing. Both countries are recognizing each other compulsions and also the strengths and weaknesses. Russia is one case where USA must understand India position. And as far as India is concerned, India need USA, but USA need India more than India need US. So therefore, that is one thing which has stand out clearly. I suppose this discussion which has taken place of Quad has really been a milestone discussion with basically this issue coming that India is not part of RCEP, but now this IPF, which is Indo-Pacific Economic Framework. In that, 13 countries are there where there is no China, but there is a US. India is part of it. I suppose economically also we stand to gain. And time has come when this forum can really challenge the hegemony and the expansionism attitude of China in Indo-Pacific. Uday.
Okay, let me in fact also get in Professor Asif Dawdi at this point on the broadcast. Professor Asif Ramiz Dawdi, how do you believe that the Quad meeting has transpired today? The statement that, of course, has come out now from the Japan Prime Minister, detailing to the media in great detail, of course, what all transpired, what were the main points discussed. Has it gone the way you expected, and which way now will this body be headed henceforth?
Uday, thank you very much for having me here. Much has already been said by my esteemed co-panelists. What I have to say, of course, you talked about Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese. We all know that it's Albanese's first big international kind of meeting. And here, this is a very clear message and stronger message, and it's actually on the expected lines. What I have to say, in fact, it's like tone and tenor has already been set for the major geopolitical development. All eyes now are on the Quad, and especially in India, and how India is participating in different international forums. We have Joe Biden, we have Fumio Kishida and Albanese, but here we know that what kind of role our Prime Minister and our nation is also playing in this. That's why, all eyes, as I said, are on the Quad and the Indian Prime Minister in India. Because essentially what we know that Quad is an alliance of all four members of significance in terms of economies, in terms of the democratic values. And one common thing is that they have one adversary in common, that is China. And we are aware of the China's hegemony, especially on the Indo-Pacific. And it's a kind of, clear message that how they can even counter China in different areas, especially on the Indo-Pacific. Some call it a military alliance and others call it an anti-China alliance. They may be right, but what I understand is it's an alliance of four major economies, and that provide opportunities to exchange views on developments in the Indo-Pacific region. And all these leaders also today mentioned about the free, open. So I also need to mention that it's free, open, inclusive and flexible and prosperous Indo-Pacific. And we all know that it covers half of the population of the world with more than 60% of global GDP. And that's why America's focus has changed from the Middle Eastern countries to Indo-Pacific. What I have to say, if we look at the theme of this summit, that is synergy. So it's a kind of synergize to energize. They just want to, get some kind of energy in the fourth meeting of Quad in less than 2 years and the second in-person Quad meeting. We are aware what China is doing, and I was listening to the Prime Minister of Australia, right now you mentioned, and how they are also talking about the Ukraine and Russia ongoing war and crisis. One thing is not common between these four nations and leaders is here that India has a different stand and different position when it comes to Russia and Ukraine war. whether it's Japan or Australia or America, they are supporting one side of the, like let's say Ukraine. But India is supporting, or it's like it goes for the peace talks and dialogues, and how there could be a ceasefire, and how we can promote kind of something that can save lives and humanity. So that is one thing which is not common between these four nations and the leaders. But what I understand, one thing we know that they are working on something, let's say, economic developments, and they promote, how trade and business can also prosper in this region, because it's a huge region. And Joe Biden's announcement, especially for what you call Indo-Pacific economic framework for prosperity, I mean, it mentions prosperity. Let's see whether it works or not. I mean, it may be a premature stage or too early to talk much about this, or maybe it's better. I think it's better late than never. It could have been done much earlier. But here, China and especially the other regions, other nations in this region, when I talk about India, it comes to my mind the China and Pakistan at the same time. So let's see how they are reacting. We have seen some sort of reaction from Chinese foreign minister, but we have to wait and watch what's coming up next. But at this moment, it's a welcome step, and I think everyone is going to be surprised with the further developments that will come, the outcomes, because they have their key challenges will be discussed today. And apart from the Indo-Pacific region, they will also discuss about kind of the first meeting review when we talk about vaccine. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, sir. Please go complete.
So these kinds of reviews would be there, I believe, and they will have some kind of plans and line of actions to be taken in future, because this is becoming a stronger team, and that's the reason everyone is looking at it. Earlier, we know that when it started in 2007, it was not that active, but suddenly, especially in these 3-4 years, when we talk about 2017 onwards, so many meetings, and the timing of this is like, today is, I think, the exact completion of 3 months of Ukraine and Russia war. So their focus will also be on that how they can try to convince India to change its position, or they may not be, because others are thinking that why India is having a position against, these European countries, and they don't want to take part in these kinds of, especially when they have pressure from European countries, from Joe Biden. At the same time, we have a stronger relation with Russia. So India is getting kind of pressure from different parts of the world, especially from European countries and America. This meeting, especially when we have 3 major countries and leaders supporting Ukraine, they are also there are assumptions that will they have some kind of dialogues that they can change India's position, which I think that will never happen, because India has a very stronger position on this. And I think that's the right position to go for the peaceful talks and dialogues and ceasefire, etc. So that is another part of this. But this is a really very humongous, major geopolitical development, especially on the Indo-Pacific region. And for Australia being the first such meeting for the president, I think it's a good start for them. Let's see whether this synergy continues well, and how they are going to be energized after this. Uday.
Okay, let me quickly go back to Nupur Tiwari at this point on the bilateral meeting that, of course, is currently on. Nupur, as far as India and the United States are concerned, which are the issues of convergence where, the relationship is stronger than ever, and which issues do need to be ironed out a bit by the two leaders? Perhaps today is a good opportunity to do so.
Yeah, exactly. I really agree with my fellow panelist, Mr. Asif, the synergy actually, it's going to stay there. What I believe, the synergy is going to stay there, especially between definitely the Japan and India. We already have really good relationship, and Japan is always for India. And the US and India, it's not that we don't have, but we need to work on many things. And especially when it comes to that Ukraine and Russia war, and you can see that India was definitely pressurized to support Ukraine by even from USA also, especially the Mr. Kishida travel when he went to India, and that was definitely one of the things he wanted to convince Mr. Modi that to support Ukraine. So these things definitely they're going to talk about. And another thing, I think that Afghanistan and Mr. Modi will talk about Afghanistan as well, because this is the thing I think we have forgotten when because of the Ukraine and US war, the media and everything, especially they're just concentrating there, and we have in the meanwhile we have forgotten about the crisis what Afghanistan is facing. That is the thing I think Mr. Modi definitely going to talk about that. And as my fellow panelist said, that today US needs India more than India needs US. So today's India has very strong side. India has become very strong, which because I experienced like Mr. Modi when yesterday he came and he went for the meeting and everything. Like there is something like, hey, I'm here to just give my opinion. It's not that I'm going to listen to you, even for Quad also. So India is not the India the world used to experience, the US used to experience. India is here to lead today. So US definitely going to need India more than India needs USA. So that is definitely Biden has that is in his mind. And another thing which actually the common problem for all of us, the China is the Japan's problem, India's problem, and then US problem, and that is the main thing I think our common interest, and that I think they are going to talk about China more than anything else, and because of the Taiwan also. And I think even India is going to emphasize there that US is going to support Taiwan. That is, we need some kind of commitment from.
Okay, I'm running out of time. Ambassador Goyal and Major General Asthana, would you like to make a quick closing comment, or should I take a break?
Just one point.
Okay.
Out of the 4 countries, 3 countries are already in security arrangement. So India is the only one which makes all the difference in Quad. There is a talk of inclusive. So when I talk of inclusive, there is a scope for expansion where India has also been looking at that. ASEAN has got a centrality to that, because you cannot take China challenge unless you take the local countries into account. So maybe at some point of time, we are looking at the ASEAN, and as Quad matures, we are also looking at there should be some secretariat, there should be some charter. All these things should also fall in place. Uday,
could I make a small remark?
Yes, very quickly, sir.
Very briefly, what is happening now in terms of the security issues coming to the forefront, and we have the security issues from Europe and Asia, Indo-Pacific, coming together in the form of challenge to the USA. This reminds me of the days before 1991. And I am actually quite concerned that what is happening now could lead to a security contest globally. Thank you.
Okay, well, let's leave it at that. My thanks to all of our guests for joining us.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.